Greetings and thanks for tuning in. I'm Don Taylor from Main Street Middle School in Montpelier, and this is the second episode of the PLP Pathways TV show for the 2017-2018 season. I'd like to thank our community partner, Orca Media, for allowing us to film here, and I'd like to introduce my co-partner.
Hi, I'm Maura Wieler. I work for Lamoille South Supervisory Union.
As part of the PLP Pathways webinar series, we offer these TV shows as a way of supporting the webinars, but also to develop the framework for personalized learning in our classrooms. And again, when we talk about personalized learning, we're talking about Act 77, and we're really looking at the three pillars, which are the personalized learning plans, proficiency-based learning, and flexible pathways. In our last series, we talked a lot about the identity phase, where teachers and students are getting to know each other's strengths and challenges, and through a variety of activities, beginning to develop a sense of what supports can be integrated into the classroom to help students thrive. And today we're going to focus more on the second phase of the personal learning framework, which is the growth and reflection phase. And setting goals, after you go through the initial identity phase, setting goals becomes the bridge between the identity phase and the growth and reflection phase. And Maura, in your experience, what did you think about when you were setting goals with kids? And it's now late September, early October in your classroom. And what's the process for setting goals?
So one of the things, whenever we think about setting goals, I always go back to knowing the student. So because we spent time in that identity phase and we formed our classroom community and we had a community identity, and we also worked individually with students to really get to know them and form relationships with students and identify their strengths, their likes, their dislikes, their challenges. So that when we do go in and we start thinking about goal setting with students, we can really start to identify some places with students where they might want to set goals. One of the first things that we do and we talk about throughout this whole identity process is the transferable skills. And so when we are working on goal setting, a lot of times we're looking at the transferable skills and helping students set goals that will show evidence of them meeting those transferable skills.
Yeah, and that some of what you just mentioned really sort of sparked some ideas from me. I think it's really critical that teachers use that identity phase to, again, develop an understanding of students and what they need from you and the class to be successful. A couple things that we focus on in the identity phase are the individual, but also relationships are critical, and also community, and then citizenship. How can kids be working and participating in a learning community, and how are those skills reflected in the transferable skills that the state of Vermont has laid out for teachers? And so when we set goals in our classroom, we spend a lot of time not only with academic goals. We negotiate with the students, what are some academic goals based on what we've seen in the first month or so of school? What could we be, types of goals could we be setting? But then we also look at the transferable skill goals. We also look at maybe some citizenship goals. And so we bring those into the conversation. We're also using a SMART goal, modified SMART goal format, so it's not completely new territory. And then the other issue I think that's really important is that when we set goals with kids, at least in my classroom, we'll spend almost a week going over the goal setting process. And when we set goals, we're including lessons on growth mindset, we're including lessons on resilience, we're including lessons on grit, and we're really talking to kids about the importance of goals and how using goals to measure their proficiencies, their learning and growth can be not only meaningful, but it can really help them to start looking for the evidence that's going to demonstrate how they're learning.
Yeah, I think, as you're saying, the goal setting process, it does take time. And it really, it's so valuable to take that time because it's laying the foundation for the rest of the school year and allowing students to have goals where they really can see evidence of growth. So you have to make sure it is that just right goal. It's that sweet spot for the student. It's something that they're personally interested in and they had choice in it. It really needs to be driven from the student so that when they are working and they're collecting that evidence, that they have that sense of empowerment as an ownership over their learning.
And I think also that not only choice in their goals, but one of the things that's come up over and over again from kids is that they need to see their goals, and they need to hear their goals, and they need to touch base with their goals to make sure that they're making progress. Too often I hear from kids that, well, I set a goal and then I forgot about it, or I set this goal and it didn't mean anything to me, and so it wasn't important. And this brings up two other aspects of goal setting that I think are critical. One is reflecting, and reflecting on a regular basis. And I always tell teachers that those reflections can be proficiency-based activities. You can ask kids, you can give kids a structured writing assessment. You can ask kids to do podcasts. You can ask kids to do videos. All those things can be assessed on, on proficiencies. And so it starts to create this cycle of here's my goal, here's my evidence, here's how I'm reflecting on that. And I just think that's a really important aspect of the goal setting, is to make sure that you have regular visits to those goals, and that you also are reflecting on a regular basis. Those are just really important. And then the other thing I want to mention is the calendar, right? So we start with the identity phase, and then I'm very aware of parent conferences, right? So parent conferences, if they're a month away, I want to have my goals set up so that kids can discuss the goals at their conferences, that those goals can be put on the PLP, and that kids can actually start collecting evidence and thinking about whether or not those goals are appropriate. And all that becomes the conversation that we have in our student-led conference.
Yeah, I think more and more we're seeing schools shifting to student-led conferences, which, as students are having more ownership out of their learning and really starting to drive their own learning, I think it's another place where it's giving them that authentic audience where they're presenting their goals to their parents or showing the parents the evidence that they have of their learning. So if we're expecting students to have ownership over their learning, they also should have ownership over how they're presenting their learning to their parents.
Absolutely. And the final tool that I think often gets overlooked with goals is getting feedback from your kids, not only about their goals, but about the goal setting process and about what types of goals they want to set. And this can become part of your negotiated curriculum. When you start getting feedback, it's really going to hone your goal setting curriculum, and I think it's invaluable. One of the things we do is just simple Google Forms. What did you think about your goals? How's it going? What could be better? What could be improved? And the kids, in my experience, will tell you. And once they give you that feedback, it becomes so much easier to really make incisive changes in your curriculum to get kids setting meaningful goals that then perpetuate themselves through the collection of evidence. And over time, if you do this repeatedly and regularly, kids will develop this whole body of work that becomes not only a great way to demonstrate their growth and learning, but also becomes valuable information for their parents, for their next year's teachers, and it's just a great way to think about setting goals. Yeah. I'd like to thank the Middle Grades Collaborative and the Tarrant Institute for helping support PLP Pathways. Again, you can tune into our webinars on YouTube. You could also reach us at the plppathways.com or .org, and follow us on Twitter at PLP Pathways. Thanks very much. Hope everybody's having a good year, and we'll see you soon.